Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to our public forum where we will be discussing how to make the Northeast Avalon a more desirable place to live. My name is Mike, to be your host here, this director for the Harris Center, which is a part of Memorial University of Newfoundland. And we are holding this event tonight in the Manuels River Hibernia Interpretation Center. I wanted to make sure I had the right title for it, which is in Conception Bay South, as well as those of you watching the live webcast. The Northeast Avalon is already a very desirable place to live. There's even a community in the region called Paradise, if further proof were needed. The region boasts world-class transportation infrastructure, excellent recreation and leisure facilities, a critical mass of population that justifies all but the most luxurious consumer goods, world-class educational institutions, relatively pure air and water for an urban agglomeration, and an absence of famine, pestilence, and war. But despite these assets, more could always be done. There still exists some serious problems or service gaps in the region that, if addressed, Avalon that much better. How can the region be further improved to make it one of the best places to live in Canada? How can we better preserve the region's natural environment? What changes should or could be made to the transportation system and recreational facilities? And how can we improve food security, income distribution, and sense of belonging? What is the relationship between urban design and the health of residents? How can we better promote civic engagement and give citizens a greater voice in the future of their community? So these are some of the questions that we'll be addressing tonight, and you may have many more. Before I introduce our presenters, let me quickly outline how the event tonight will proceed. In a moment, I'll introduce our main presenter, who will speak for about a half hour. I will then introduce our three panelists, who will each speak for about 10 minutes. And that'll take up about the first hour of the event. And then it's your turn. For those of you in the room with me, we will be circulating a wireless microphone. And if you want to ask a question or make a comment, we'll get the microphone over to you. For those of you who are watching the webcast, you will see an email address and a Twitter handle at the bottom of your screen. Simply, and there's also a text box on the screen, so simply email your question or comment to one of our people here who will read it out for our panel to respond. The discussion part of the session will be moderated by my colleague, the Executive Director of the Harris Center, Dr. Rob Greenwood, and we will adjourn at 9 o'clock Newfoundland time. And before I move on, let me quickly advertise a day-long workshop that the Harris Center will be holding tomorrow, right here in the Manuels River Hibernia Interpretation Center, where we will explore ways in which Memorial can assist the Northeast Avalon become a more desirable place to live. Admission to the workshop is free, and even if you haven't registered, you can still show up. It starts with a complimentary breakfast at 8 o'clock. We will finish at 4, and then lunch and coffee is complimentary throughout the day. So without further ado, it's now my pleasure to introduce our main presenter. Randy Gillespie is a professional, he calls himself a professional commuter and longtime resident of Conception Bay South. Since 1984, he has lived in CBS and has worked in turn in St. John's, Mount Pearl, Torbay, and most recently, Holyrood. As director of the Center for Applied Ocean Technology at the Marine Institute, he managed to transfer a team of 10 professionals from St. John's to the Holyrood Marine Base in 2012. Since being posted to Holyrood, he's been working with town officials on the concept of a cold ocean innovation and research park as an economic growth strategy for the region. So it's my great pleasure to invite Randy Gillespie to the podium.
Thank you, Mike, and good evening, everyone. Can you all hear me okay? Mike's got to be a little bit closer. My voice doesn't carry all that well. Is that better? A bit. I'll lean. I'll lean in. Oh, there we go. Okay, thanks. All right, a little bit of volume. I'll begin with a disclaimer. What I'm about to describe is very much at the conceptual stage. It's a concept we've been working on with our friends from the town of Holyrood for about a year and a half now. But there's still many details to be worked out and a long ways to go before it becomes reality. But I'm presenting it as a possible option for an economic development strategy for a community on the Northeast Avalon, such as Holyrood. I would also like to acknowledge the efforts of Ms. Natasha Footham, who began this process with me about a year and a half ago when she was the executive director of the Ocean Holyrood Initiative. She's since moved to Qatar and is with her partner and is raising a newborn baby now. So she helped out with the early stages of this, and I wanted to acknowledge that. So the Holyrood Marine Base was purchased by the Marine Institute in 2010. Basically, it was a derelict fish plant located at the bottom of Holyrood Arm in Holyrood. It's become a campus of sorts of the Fisheries and Marine Institute, and a base for at-sea research and technology development. And our being Marine Institute and Memorial University is sort of portal to the ocean. From our perspective at the Marine Institute, it's part of our 2020 becoming a World Oceans Institute, and it provides us with a key part of that strategy, which is ocean access. It really becomes sort of a replacement for our Southside Marine Base, which some of you may be familiar with in St. John's Harbor, which will be shut down, and those activities will be moved to Holyrood. And it's complementary to the Bombay Research Station that's operated by the university on the West Coast. Since establishing the Holyrood Marine Base in Holyrood, it's become sort of a hotbed of training activity. Here's some folks doing some offshore safety and survival training at the Holyrood facility. We train a number of students from our programs, including our ROV operator training program, part-time out of the Holyrood Marine Base. We support industrial research and development with small businesses located both locally and nationally. This is a vehicle, an autonomous vehicle that's being developed by a company called Marine Robotics Limited at the time, and this is a picture sort of at the existing marine base. And we do a little bit of our own sort of research, in this case, an autonomous surface vehicle for shallow water mapping from the marine base. We've mapped Holyrood Arm in some detail using multi-beam echo sounder technology. And for those of you who are not available, it's basically, like the word says, it's a multi-beam echo sounder. It basically spray paints the seabed with sound and creates a very high density, high resolution map of the seabed, sort of like satellites do for the bits of our country that stick out of the water. On the left-hand side is a color-coded depth chart for Holyrood Arm. So purple is deep and yellows and oranges are shallow. And on the right is the strength of acoustic backscatter from the sonar. And so dark areas tend to be hard and light areas tend to be softer. So it gives us some indication of what the bottom's like. And we've also instrumented the bay with a meteorological oceanographic buoy. So we're monitoring weather and sea state conditions in Holyrood Arm, and you're able to access that information online via our www.smartbay.ca website. As Mike mentioned in his introduction, we kind of went through an exercise in 21st century approach to resettlement when we moved my team from St. John's to Holyrood. It's a fabulous place to work. It affords us with a marvelous opportunity to get on the ground floor of a significant development within the university's framework, but it was a bit of a challenge in terms of moving folks who were used to working and living in St. John's to Holyrood. I have some people, for example, who were commuting from Airport Heights to the Marine Institute on Ridge Road, so a commute of maybe 5 kilometers each way per day, who are now doing about 50 kilometers each way per day. So, you know, a big impact on their work life and also on their personal life. Things like transportation, there's no public transit to a place like Holyrood. Even simple things like access to a grocery store in a community like Holyrood is not there. So it's been an interesting exercise. We're settling in there now. Some of the team left us and moved off to other positions, and we've had other people come in. And as that changeover takes place, of course, people are moving in and looking at taking up residence right in Holyrood as part of their future. So overall, it's been positive. But you know, from an economic development and a you know, sort of development of the Northeast Avalon, it was a bit of an exercise and a bit of a change for us to go through. The Holyrood Marine Base, from the Marine Institute University's perspective, is basically being developed in 3 phases. The first phase was to purchase the site. We put the building that we're living and working out of now, that you see on the left-hand side of this image, right on the foundation of the cold storage shed for the original fish plant. So we're built on the foundation of the fishery, you might say. The fish plant itself was not satisfactory for repurposing, so we raised that to the ground, and we've put up, you can just see behind that that building there, a white dome. It's basically, we call it the bouncy castle. It's a temporary storage and workspace that's built by the folks at Dynamic Air Shelters out of Fortune. And we're using that as I say, as temporary sort of storage and workspace. For now, we're using the existing wharf that was with the fish plant. Again, for now, phase 2A, as it's referred to, is now underway. It started about 3 weeks ago, and we're actually putting in a marginal wharf and breakwater at the site, and I'll show you some photos of that. And then phase 3 will be actually a multi-purpose research facility, which will be about a 40,000 square foot building. That would be roughly on the footprint of that bouncy castle, and I'll show you some photos of that as well. So that's kind of the plan that's in place now, with phase 1 complete, phase 2 underway, and it'll take about a year. 50,000 truckloads of rock, from what I've been told. That sounds high. I'll say 5,000 truckloads of rock going into the harbor there to create the marginal wharf and breakwater. So a significant effort that's underway now. The Holyrood Cold Ocean Research and Innovation Park that we've been working on, as I say, Natasha Footham and I started putting this concept together and then presenting it to the university and to the folks in the town of Holyrood, is a concept that ties together things that are happening, the plans that are underway with the university and its development plans, and also the plans that are underway and development plans for the town, and aligning with their Whole Oceans Holyrood initiative strategy. And I'll take you through that, hopefully in a way that kind of unpacks how that makes sense from our perspective in terms of the long-term economic development of the town, and also the long-term strategy for the university. First, just a few words about, what is a university research park? From my perspective, it's very much of a misnomer, because it's as much about innovation and small business development as it is about research. It's basically a physical environment that generates, attracts, retains technology companies and talent that align with the sponsoring research institution, which can be a university. In our case, it is, but it can also be government research labs, private research labs, that sort of thing. So the whole idea is that it's enabling the flow of idea between technology generators, typically viewed as the university or those public-private labs, and the technology companies, the folks that will commercialize that, that technology. And that's, I guess, the innovation part of that, of our Cold Ocean Innovation and Research Park. Again, there's a very strong emphasis on supporting the startup of companies and retention and expansion of those companies, and attraction of firms into the region. So from an economic development perspective from the town, this is something that's very attractive to them. The Association of University Research Parks, there is such a thing, as I found out through my colleague Natasha, define basically a university research park as having a master plan that's designed around both research, that's, in my vernacular, turning money into ideas, and innovation, which is turning ideas into money. So we're kind of bringing that around full circle. Involvement of at least one university. In our case, that would be Memorial University and the Marine Institute. Support for startups and incubation, and as you'll see, that's happening in the town of Holyrood now. Technology transfer from the lab to the companies and back again, and then it's this focus on technology-led, or in our case, it's kind of that tapping into the blue economy trend, if you will, in terms of focusing on a marine or an oceans-related research park. Again, if we look at the statistics that have been published by the Association of University Research, tend to view this very positively. 3/4 of the companies claim that locating in a university research park helps them to attract and retain HQPs, highly qualified personnel, which is a big problem for small businesses in the high-tech sector, getting skilled labor. 75% or 3/4 of those university research parks have accelerators and other business services to assist the startups. And again, we're focusing on that in the model that we're putting together. And the 26 parks that currently exist in Canada, none in Newfoundland or Labrador at this point in time, support about, and this is based on 2012 data, about 65,000 jobs, generating 4.3 billion in GDP and paying out significant dollars in terms of salaries and in terms of taxes that they're paying to the communities that they exist in. So I guess one of the first questions that we had to sort of struggle with a little bit from our own perspective was, why cold ocean? And I think many of us recognizing the growing importance of Arctic both in the national framework and also internationally. I say, why not? We're one of the, if not the farthest south located geographically places on the Earth that you can do Arctic research because of the geographic characteristics of the Labrador Current, bringing down that cold Arctic water right onto Grand Bank, and having these lovely slippery sailors visit us annually. That is an iceberg in Conception Bay, by the way. Great place to do survival training in cold Arctic conditions, right here on our own doorstep. Sorry. So that kind of, from my perspective, why not embrace our crappy climate and focus on cold ocean? In terms of the components of what would be included in this innovation and research park concept, the development of the Marginal Wharf and Breakwater, which is the next phase of our development at the Holyrood Marine Base. I don't know, is there a pointer on this? Oh, yes, there is. So this is the existing wharf here. This is the building footprint that I showed earlier. You've seen several photographs of. So along here, we're putting in rock and fill, and then building out a breakwater here with a wharf all the way inside. So this is north down. So this is heading out the bay, and this is going up towards the bottom of the bay, just to get you situated. To me, this is probably the most important step in the development of the site from my perspective, because if you've been down in that area anytime when the wind is blowing from the north, it's quite exposed and you're getting waves washing over the existing wharf there. So without that breakwater to kind of protect us, we're kind of hung out there in the cold Northwest Atlantic. So that to me is an important first step, and it's going ahead now. It'll give us not only sort of protection from these sort of conditions, but also gives us lots of space for mooring research ships and that sort of thing. This is an artist's conception of what the multi-purpose research facility may look like. It's a few years down the road before we get the finances in place to kind of start construction on that. Again, here's the existing building here, and this would be your new Marginal Wharf and Breakwater, and our own ship, the Ann Pierce, docked alongside. There's another photo from the air looking at how that site might look into the future, going from a university perspective. From a town perspective, many of you will be aware that the old rubber plant has been knocked down in Holyrood. It was basically here. This again shows conceptually kind of what they're calling a business innovation park might look like into the future in terms of developing that site. A town center development here, and then the business innovation park up here with an Oceans Innovation Center as part of that park. And they've done a fair bit of work with a team of consultants led by Pat Curran, sort of looking into the business feasibility of that and setting up a development corporation and those sorts of things. So there's been a bit of work by the town to kind of develop that concept, and they've moved forward with knocking down that old rubber plant, which allows them then to move forward with that. My next slide, unfortunately, is probably my worst slide in terms of being busy and hard to interpret. What I'm trying to get at here is that if we take the multi-purpose research facility, the Holyrood Ocean Innovation Business Park that the town's developing, the Oceans Holyrood Initiative itself, which is something the town has been focusing on developing around the blue economy, if you will, put that together with a partnership that he developed with Startup Newfoundland, which is focusing on creating startup companies, investing in startup companies. The partnership that they've developed with the Genesis Center, which is part of the university itself, to incubate companies that are there in the town. Combine that with our own plans, and I didn't have time to cut into much detail, but we're also developing the arm itself as a living laboratory, an ocean technology test bed. If you put all those things together, and all of those are happening in various stages of planning and implementation, then I think that the concept, in my mind, of a cold ocean innovation and research park kind of makes the whole greater than the sum of the parts. It gives context to these developments that are happening sort of in bits and pieces and ties them all together. And that was kind of my big message in my presentation. So I apologize for the slide. One of the one of the most interesting things, or the things that rings true to me in terms of this being a strategy for economic development for the town, is that the best research parks, best university research parks, are characterized by what they call a live, work, play environment. And what that means, we've added learn here because, of course, we're all about teaching and learning at the university. What that means is that the people who live and work and exist as part of this university research park become part of the community. And they therefore are supporting other aspects of community development, like commercial retail and schools and daycares and recreation facilities and that sort of thing. So it becomes very much a kind of a community activity. It's not people who are parachuting in for a day and then parachuting out again. And one observation I'd make, again, based on the introduction that Mike gave to me, is that as a resident of CBS, the pattern here on the Northeast Avalon, for me, seems to be that we live in one place, we work in another, and we play in another again. So the whole business of live, work, play inside your community is not quite there for us. As Mike said, I live in CBS. I've lived there for 36 years now, about that. Worked in various other places, now in Holyrood, and I tend to play at my summer place, which is out in Bay of Exploits. So I'm kind of all over the place in terms of being a member of the community on the Northeast Avalon. So again, this Cold Ocean Innovation Research Park idea, if we can get it off the ground for Holyrood, offers this more sort of all-encompassing economic environment for the town of Holyrood. And I'll just leave you with one last shot from my office. Lovely place to live and work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Randy. It's interesting to know that we've gone from taking fish out of the water to taking knowledge out of the water and selling that knowledge, which we could probably make more money off that than we could make off fish. And it also proves that you don't have to be in Silicon Valley to be innovating. You can do that in Holyrood or in any other kind of rural area. So it's a wonderful example, Randy. Thank you. I'm now going to introduce our next three speakers all at one time and in the order in which they'll be speaking, just to save a bit of time. Mary Bishop is an urban planner who has worked throughout Newfoundland and Labrador over the past 30 years. She led a team to prepare the first regional plan for the Humber Valley and was a member of the planning authority established to oversee the creation of the Labrador Inuit settlement area under the Labrador Inuit Lands Claim Agreement. As a senior project manager with CBCL Limited, she conducted planning work for St. John's, Mount Pearl, Conception Bay South, Paradise, Petty Harbour, and Torbay, so pretty well the whole Northeast Avalon. In recent years, her work has focused on improving municipal planning policies for healthier built environments. Over the course of her career, her work has been recognized for excellence in planning. Most recently, in 2004, she was inducted as a Fellow of the Canadian Institute of Planners in recognition of her contribution to community planning and the planning profession of Canada. So that's Mary Bishop. Ross Houlihan is the Economic Development Officer for the town of Torbay, a role he has occupied for almost 4 years. He holds a bachelor's degree in business from the Waterford Institute of Technology in Waterford City, Ireland. Ross has been the lead staff member on the development of Amherst Landing / Torbay Town Centre, a new centrally located mixed-use development in Torbay near the community's town hall. This is a planned, walkable neighborhood in Torbay. The 30-acre site will be home to high-density residential developments, commercial retail development, access to the East Coast Trail, and open public space. And our third and final panelist, Jennifer Lake, is the Economic Development Coordinator with the town of Conception Bay South, of which she is a lifelong resident. Jennifer has worked in the public sector for over 15 years, seven of them with her current employer. Bachelor's degree from Memorial University and her certificate in economic development from the University of Waterloo. Jennifer obtained her designation of certified professional from the Economic of Canada in September 2013 and has since achieved her fellowship designation, the first economic development professional in the province to achieve. Congratulations. Earlier this year, Jennifer was appointed as the Atlantic Province's Retail Public Sector Chair, Council of Shopping Centres. She is also the chair of the Long Pond Harbour Authority and the vice chair of the Economic Developers Association of Newfoundland and Labrador. She enjoys volunteering, volleyball, and being a mom to 3 active children Nathan, Jenna, and Carter. So please welcome our panelists, and please welcome Mary Bishop to the podium.
Thank you, Mike. It's my pleasure to be here this evening and to see so many people in the audience that I recognize from my work in this region over the last number of years. So I thought when we met as a group that we're going to speak here tonight, that maybe if I were to talk more about, because it is about the region, so that we think a little bit about this area as a region, and what is it that makes a region livable. And oftentimes I've found that when you try to engage people in discussions about a region, it's very difficult for people to kind of wrap their mind around that. They tend to focus on my neighborhood or my community, and it's difficult for people to see how that fits in with the broader picture of a region. So one of the things I started looking for, well, how do people kind of define or think about regions and what makes regions successful? And I looked up a couple. The Economist has this global livability ranking for cities typically, and the considered in what makes cities or regions livable are things like the stability, political stability, what kind of infrastructure is in place to support economies and populations. Is there a high level of educational facilities and opportunities that allow people to become educated and to continue learning throughout their lifetime? Access to health, of course, and the general health of people in a region gets kind of factored into those decisions. And then, of course, the environmental factors, air quality, water quality, whether there's pollution or not. Money Sense has a list called Best Places to Live in Canada, and you sort of start to see similar kinds of things that are factored into this idea of what makes an area livable. So employment, is it affordable? Can you afford to live here? Things like the weather, low crime rates, public transportation, all of those kinds of things. And healthy population growth, I think that's something that we need to think about in this region, is what's happening with our population, and is it a healthy? It's not simply enough to think about the total number of people, but also the composition of the population and where it is trending over time. If we think about livability and what makes places good places to live, and how we feel in an area, certainly those things that determine how healthy we can be in living are things that are important, and things that the shape of our communities and our neighborhoods have a great deal of influence on. So things that public health people call the determinants of health, things that have an influence on how healthy we can be, are things that are influenced every day by decisions that cities and towns and communities make in the way that we organize ourselves kind of on the land. And if you look at that list there, you can start to think about things like income and social status, whether there's employment, whether there's economic opportunity for people to become employed and have income, the social environments that we have, the sort of ideas of diversity and acceptability, supports in society that create places that people can have, some places actually measure happiness as an indicator of livability in a region. So all of these kinds of things, if we look at livability through a health lens, we start to think about the way that we organize ourselves and how that contributes to our health and overall livability. And I'm sure people are tired of hearing about how unhealthy we all are here in this province. Generally, it's the case throughout Canada and in North America that today's issues of epidemics are not associated with sort of viruses and disease. They're associated with things that are entirely preventable. They're the chronic diseases like diabetes and heart disease that are entirely preventable. And while these statistics here are for Newfoundland and Labrador, the same data for the Northeast Avalon is not all that different. So we have this higher incidence of obesity, low levels of physical activity. There's a lot of people with high blood pressure, probably because of lack of physical activity, and hospitalizations for strokes and things like that, which are very much preventable, are costing us a tremendous amount in terms of the money that we spend on healthcare. So if we think about how we might organize ourselves in a region to be more healthy, we start to think about the kinds of things that, the way that we organize ourselves and carry out our day-to-day activities and how they can facilitate better health of the population and of individuals. And we can see that our physical environment can play a big role in that. And there's certainly over the last 5 years or last decade a huge body of research coming out of the public health field that is linking issues of health and these kind of chronic diseases with this form of our physical environment. Some of these are functions of lifestyle, but certainly the physical environment can have an impact. So if we don't have opportunities in places where we live to be physically active, whether we choose to be active or not, we don't have very much choice if we're all the time having to be in a car and driving to everything that we go to, including the gym, which if you think, back in many of our parents' generations, there were no gyms and people were physically active just as a function of their daily life, walking to their fish plant where they might have worked, or in the woods, or farming or whatever. It was very much, their daily life was very much involving physical activity. And that's changed drastically over the past 100 years or so. So things like infrastructure certainly has an impact on our health and the way that we organize neighborhood streets. If there aren't sidewalks, if there's a lack of certain types of housing that supports people in communities, people with a variety of housing needs. The neighborhood design, again, provides opportunities for people to be physically active. Mixed use types of developments, there's a lot of thinking now about the importance of having mixed kinds of use neighborhoods or areas within communities that facilitate more social interaction and reduce this kind of social isolation that different segments of our society suffer from. And the role of parks and nature and being able to access that is also something that has a big influence on health and access to healthy food. Some of the situations that exist in some of the very large cities, particularly in the United States, where there are things we're calling food deserts, where the only access people have really to fresh food are convenience stores, which typically only offer high salt, fat, sugar foods. And so then the incidences of obesity are much greater, and therefore the overall health of people in those areas is much lower. So if we think about this region, and I'm familiar with a number of things going on in some of the communities around, we look at what our community is doing to improve their livability. And, there's a lot more attention being paid these days to walkability. People are demanding greater walkability within their community. So they work all day to get in their car. We're largely a commuting population. Get in their car, you drive to work, you drive to your grocery, you drive everywhere, you go home. People know what they need to do to be healthy. Eat right, get exercise. It's not that complicated. And so they're demanding more access to being able to walk in their communities. And so some communities are developing active transportation strategies around that include things like cycling, and investment in infrastructure as well. So a lot of money in this region is being spent on upgrading older infrastructure, not only roads, but sidewalks, water, treatment of water, and just making sure we have good quality drinking water for the population, and wastewater facilities. So all of that kind of infrastructure, in addition to recreational facilities. I think we've seen over the past 5 or 6 years, new recreational facilities, reinvestment in parks, and that kind of thing. You think of Bowring Park and Bannerman Park, and now Victoria Park in the city will be redesigned, are becoming much more vibrant and social gathering places. Planning strategy. So people like me are trying to rewrite municipal plans to encourage municipal policies so that development occurs in a way that facilitates more healthy living among populations. So trying to facilitate more mixed type of use, not only within neighborhoods, but within commercial areas. Reducing the idea of that separation of uses that planning typically promoted in previous decades. Urban agriculture is certainly becoming a kind of a hot topic if you listen to the news, and it's not only about backyard chickens, but certainly our ability to grow our own food in areas. I mean, this region has a protected land bank of agricultural land that over the decades has been whittled down to a smaller, really core area, to the point where we're not growing any more land, but that land, the value of that land now is becoming quite high, and so that's a regional kind of thing that I think we could think of in terms of food security. There's the other thing that's happening is quite a reinvestment in town centers, and a number of the communities, and some that you'll hear from tonight, are looking at their older parts of the town, typically at the center, and looking at ways to revitalize them, to make them more of a people place, and those places where people can come together within communities. City of St. John's is looking at Water Street. We've got Conception Bay South, Torbay, and a number of the others are looking at how do we create more, a better sense of community within our communities. So what's needed to make this region more livable? Now I'll just throw it a couple of ideas. If we think about it from a regional perspective, and I think that in my experience, it's difficult for people to think on a regional basis. And so it's everybody kind of for themselves. And what may be in the interest of one community may not be in the interest of the overall region. And I think in that case, we need provincial policies that apply to urban areas. A lot of other provinces have provincial interests in how their cities and urban regions develop. And we really don't have much of that here in this province. Greater regional cooperation. And I'm not suggesting that there isn't cooperation among the municipalities of the region, but I think that there could be more cooperation and for reasons of regional success and regional sustainability. I would say that I'd suggest that there's a lack of urban regional research in this region. And when I was involved in trying to collect information about the region a number of years ago, it was very difficult. There really hasn't been any sort of solid urban region research done here probably since the 1970s. And I think it would be beneficial. We started to, and maybe the university has some role in developing that. There's emphasis on regional systems. I mean, we've got a regional water supply system. We have the regional waste management, these boards that regulate these kinds of things. We don't have any kind of regional transportation system or anyone that kind of oversees the transportation within the region at a regional level. It's pretty well every municipality for themselves. And also, I'd suggest that we need to start developing some tools that enable us to assess how development in different parts of the region affects the region overall, and in terms of costs and benefits. And certainly if we look at what's happened in this region over the last 10 years, where there's just been a lot of development pressure, a lot of economic activity, and have we really managed that in our own best interests on a regional perspective? It's just something I think we need to think about. So maybe that'll spark some discussion later on. Okay, I think that's it. Yep. I don't know which one. This is mine now. It goes over there.
There you go, sir.
Good evening, everyone. You can hear me fine? I'll try and talk a little louder. As Mike said, Mike, thanks for inviting me, and Colin, of course, for putting it all together tonight. Randy started with a disclaimer, so I'll start with a disclaimer. I didn't just study in Ireland, I am Irish. And I usually throw out at the start of my presentations that if you're having any issues with understanding me, because I'm here about 10 years, so it's a half Irish, half Newfoundland accent, you're having issues understanding me not because I'm talking too fast, it's because you're listening too slow. So watch out for that as we go along. But I'm here to talk about Torbay Town Centre. So this is our little piece, I guess our little livable quarter of the region that we wanted to look at for a number of reasons, which I'll get to, I guess, as we go through it. But just to give a snapshot of the town, where we stand at the moment. Everything's on 2011 figures from the most recent census. We estimate we're probably closer to 8,000 in terms of our population. We remain the second fastest growing urban municipality in the province. We have a feeling that might change when the next census statistics come out, but we can still claim it today. Approximately 150 businesses, and people sometimes kind of raise their eyebrows at that on the town because they could drive from one end of Torbay to the other and not see those businesses, but the majority are home-based offices, and we've got consulting firms in those home-based offices that cover a huge variety of businesses, industries, and the countries in which they do business in as well. So they're invisible businesses, but they are there. Our personal income per capita is the 7th highest in the province. The average couple family income, you can see there, is more than double the income per capita. So we do have a lot of working families, professional working families with two main incomes in our municipality. And our median age is 37, which is quite young in the province as well. So we have an interesting mix in our town. So the actual town centre project, and this is a good place to start off because we are at the 30,000 feet, I guess, on Google Maps. But it's funny, we mentioned it, I chatted with Randy before we started off today. Despite the province being as open and as windswept and as barren as it is in places, there's a lot of areas where we're actually running out of land because we haven't been using the land in the most efficient way. So within the town of Torbay, we've seen some massive growth, and you can see some of it. This is a new subdivision 10, 15 years ago, didn't exist. It's Western Island Pond. This area down here is the Karen Drive area. So these are, apologies, these are brand new subdivisions, but of course they're single lot development. It's not the most efficient use of the land that we have in the town. An interesting concept to me as an Irish person coming here was this concept of crown land. That doesn't exist in Ireland. Every square inch of Ireland is fenced off, walled off, owned by someone. So the fact that there was crown land was a very interesting concept. But Torbay is getting to a point where there's not a whole lot of private land ownership, vacant private land ownership left. It's within this town centre. So the town centre is that really crude red X that I scrawled on the map there in our downtown. We'll zoom in a little bit more. And you'll see this is Torbay Road running north through the town. This is where Torbay Road splits with Marine Drive and heads over to Logie Bay, Middle Cove, Outer Cove. Our municipal centre and the RBC Bank you might be familiar with is right here, and our fire station. And the town centre is this land bank back here, basically in this right angle of land back to the ocean, hemmed in by the East Coast Trail on, we'll say, the northern end. So it's approximately 30 acres, as you can see there, of prime developable land. We're hoping that it'll support residential, commercial, tourism, and civic infrastructure, but also become that hub for the community, for business and resident activity. You'll see Torbay is no different in terms of some other communities that have had strip development. They've just followed development along the main roads through the community. Again, not the most efficient. So you end up with great big land banks behind those buildings that are developed along the main routes. So this, we're lucky enough to have an actual access point to this 30-acre plot of land. So here you see a bit of a concept. So this is an overlay onto the map you just saw. You'll see, you'll see a wellness center at the core, which is still at the concept stage itself. This new road would run through the development and open up a massive amount of land in the area. It would open up all these parcels that at the moment are completely landlocked. They also show some of the ownership lines in the area as well. The wellness center here is actually a municipally owned portion of land. At the moment, the town depot is in this area, and we're hoping that the depot will actually be moving on the first week of July, or early July at least, to a new site off the Torbay Bypass Road. Construction is ongoing at the moment, so we're hoping that that little, we'll say, blot on the area will move to a more logistically useful site for those type of activities in the town. So zooming in, you'll just take a look and see, well, what's this infrastructure in the ground? So on this slide here, you'll see some of the main water lines in blue and some of the main sewer lines in the purpley pink color in the area. So it did make sense to have some of the municipal infrastructure in the ground already here, and you'll see that the concept for the new road also follows some of those main sewer lines as well. On the far side, you'll see the existing zoning in the area. So the blue here is all public use. So we've got the school, we've got Holy Trinity Parish Church here, and we've got the existing town hall and fire hall. You've got mixed use. So mixed use has followed almost the entire length of Torbay Road. So you can have theoretically factories next to homes, such as the mixed use pot. Over here, you've got single residential dwelling. And the green area here is our conservation zone, which wraps itself right the way around Torbay Bight. This was a 3D concept for the area. So the thinking behind it was to make the most use of the land that I said is finite in the area. It's to go up. So to look at 3 to 4 stories, to look at having the buildings tight to the road, to build that streetscape that people want to have in the area. I would try and suggest it as being along Water Street. If you can picture Water Street, 3 to 4 story high buildings on either side, we're hoping to have a little bit more green space in between some of those buildings, to have a little bit more open space. The concept came about through, and I have to mention the 3 partners, our consulting firms that worked on the project were CBCL, and Mary here was one of the consulting leads on the project. We also had Millier Dickinson Blay, who are now known as MDB Insight. They were an economic development statistics firm who were able to look at the market, look at the share of the market, looking at where customers who are residents who would be using the town centre would be coming from. And then also Waterworks Communications helped us with the branding on the project as well. But even just a step back before we got to this point, we did a lot of public consultation, looked at some of the groups in the town, looked at our community groups, what did they want? What do they see lacking in the town? We looked out to residents. CBCL set up shop in the community for a couple of days so people could drop into their location, give their opinions. Open spaces, family friendly, were pretty high on the line, along with the community center, and just more retail options were big things that were requested. But you can see from the streetscape that what was planned to make that streetscape kind of special and unique was to have the buildings close to that concept road that runs right the way through, and have the parking to the rear. We all know that some of the large big box development has your building, has your parking, and has your road, so you have big gaps between the road and the building you're trying to get to with large oceans of asphalt. So this was trying to reverse it a little bit, build a nice dynamic for that street and have it as a nice place to basically to hang out, become a hub, become a kind of community center. An interesting one that was looked at, and it was looked at from many, many different viewpoints, but even to say, where's the sun? Which side of the street should have a deeper sidewalk? Where should the coffee houses be located so they can have their outdoor patios and things like that? Really trying to create a really nice theme, a really nice area for residents to hang out on the street. This is the overview. So you'll see some of these areas, we're hoping to keep a lot of green space. We're hoping that community areas, public performance areas can still take place. We're hoping that some of the residential areas, which will be the north side, overlooking the water. I've got some booklets on your way out. Be sure to grab one. You can take a look at what the site and the viewscape. We've got an issue in the town where we've got we'll say the aging population or the aging demographic in the town, and this is not just the same for Torbay, but goes to a lot of municipalities, are probably living in homes that are probably too big for the occupants at the moment. The kids have left the house, have moved on. People are looking to downsize, but the issue is if they want to downsize right now, they'll probably have to leave Torbay, and they don't want to do that. So the residents end up staying. The elderly residents are staying in the town simply to be in a bigger home. These are the options to have condominiums or apartments, something of that nature. High density, which is a new word in Torbay, so that we can make the most use of the land that we have. We're looking at having some retail options too. In the bottom floor of some of these buildings, again, kind of like the Water Street model, where you do have the shop fronts on the level and with residential areas above in those buildings. That's the kind of artist's impression that came from the project as well. So you can kind of have a look and see, we have developed a series of building guidelines to try and help developers who would come in and build some of these buildings, because there's about 11 different landowners in the area, in the entire 30 acres. So we could see a lot of one-off development in different parcels. So we wanted to make sure that there was a standard in place so that no matter who the builder was or who the developer was, they'd all follow the same guidelines. So you wouldn't have massively different buildings altogether. There still would be a theme. This town center concept is adjacent to some of the oldest buildings in our town in the lower road area down around Torbay Beach. So we want to maintain that kind of theme in some of the old looking buildings. And again, that was some great work done by our consulting leads who were able to help us develop those design strategies. The branding for the building, or for the entire concept, this is where we do the history bit. In 1762, Colonel William Amherst led a British landing party to take back Signal Hill from the French. Of course, the English and French had been sharing Signal Hill over the previous 100 years, but it was the final battle to retake Signal Hill started in Torbay with Colonel Amherst landing on Torbay Beach. So we wanted to keep that theme, to have that link between the history. It is a very historical site. It is one of the oldest areas of Torbay. That's where the original settlers would have landed, would have arrived, would have set up shop. So we wanted to maintain that link and have the modern interpretation on our municipal colors and looking at the hills overlooking Torbay in this symbol here. So that's what we're trying to do. We're still in the process of completing the zoning on the area. You saw the zoning that we looked at with the public use, with the mixed use. We're in the middle of turning the entire zoning area now into what's called a town center zone. We're hoping that will be done this year. With the economy the way it is, we're not quite sure if we'll have shovels in the ground this year from developers, but we're hoping that we might have some land acquisition. We're seeing some signs of that already, so that hopefully when the economic situation is a little bit better, we may actually see some construction on the site. And that's my presentation.
So I'll just jump right on and start in here to keep us on time, hopefully. Thank you to Rob and to Colin for inviting me to participate on the panel discussion here this evening. And thank you for bringing your Memorial Presents series to Conception Bay South. We do appreciate that. And as well, your workshop tomorrow will be hosted here as well at the center. So we're looking forward to a great day of regional collaboration tomorrow. So I learned today that everyone had developed PowerPoint presentations. So I said, I better do the same thing. So I do have a PowerPoint, but you'll be happy to know it's all photographs. And I promised Mike I'd stay to 10 minutes. So I had to write a script, because anyone who knows me knows that once I start to talk about Conception Bay South, I can go on and on. So I do have some things that I want to say, and I had to write them down to make sure I got them out. Health in the built environment, livability, pride, and attachment. These are buzzwords in the economic development and planning worlds that keep me doing what I love to do. Promoting the livability of Conception Bay South and having the personal attachment to the town that I do have allows me to execute my role with a great deal of pride and passion. I certainly do not see my role as a job, but more of a pleasurable duty to talk about the town anytime I'm given the opportunity. When Mike and I had the conversation to prepare for this panel, he simply said, just tell us what CBS is doing to make itself livable. So off I went on my usual tangent. Great stuff, Mike said, but you only have 10 minutes. Mary spoke about the measures of livability, and while she was speaking, I was making a mental checklist. Stability, infrastructure, education, health, and environment. So here I go. In 2015, the town of Conception Bay South had experienced an unprecedented amount of growth and development, which we anticipate will continue in the future despite the economy of today. Commercial development has been steadily progressing in the past 10 years, with over 50 businesses opening their doors in 2015. The Gateway Retail Project and its appeal to major developers and retailers continues to flourish. The project will boost economic development in the town for the long term, and residents of Conception Bay South will begin seeing our vision of providing the ultimate one-stop destination come to fruition. With respect to new development, in 2015, over 1,260 permits were issued by the town's Planning and Development Department for residential and commercial buildings, accessory buildings, and general repairs. All 12 residential lots are approved for development in 2016. This January, the Fire Enforcement and Public Safety Committee of Council was formed. This committee continually liaises with agencies including the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary, Fire and Emergency Services, the Canadian Red Cross, and the Salvation Army, to name a few, with the purpose of reviewing and analyzing all areas of enforcement and safety in Conception Bay South. Herein lies the stability piece. In relation to infrastructure, in 2016, over $15 million will be invested in a new and upgraded water and sewer infrastructure, including water system improvements to ensure water consumption efficiency, stormwater upgrading, and street upgrading and paving. These are all important projects to residents, and we will continue to deliver these upgrades in the coming years as required. Now here's where I get technical. Or not. Where do I point it? This one? Okay, perfect. I'll just use that. The Conception Bay South Arena opened its doors in February. It contains an NHL regulation-sized ice surface and what has become an extremely popular walking track. In addition to local sporting events, equipment to convert the ice surface to a venue floor, creating space that can be used for trade shows, conferences, expos, and various community-related events, has been purchased through cost-shared arrangements. The equipment has created functional capacity for the town to explore sports tourism opportunities in cooperation with other municipalities in the region. Our new fire hall has been designed to maximize public safety efforts through the latest technological advancements, making the town of Conception Bay South a leader in emergency operations management. This facility opened in November. The town also has a recreation complex that provides pool-related programming for all age groups, and plans are underway to host a Doors Open event during Municipal Awareness Day on May 11th, I encourage anyone in the region who would like to tour some of our new buildings to mark your calendars. They are very, very impressive. Exciting day in the town. Moving on to environment, as well as still on the line of infrastructure. Stretching from Topsail to Seal Cove, the Trailway provides a major link that connects our community. In 2013, the Grand Concourse Authority started the redevelopment of our former rail bed into a world-class pedestrian and cycling mecca, providing opportunities for active transportation and annual social interaction, including walking, running, cycling, snowshoeing, and skiing. And this concept was brought about during a feasibility study and conceptual design, which was done by Track Consulting. Due to cost-shared funds, 10 kilometers of the are fully completed, with funding confirmed just this past week to complete an additional 4 kilometers of trailway and 3-kilometer portion to link to our Gateway Business Park to the trailway. It is anticipated the full 18 kilometers of trailway connecting the east and west boundary will be completed in 2018. From a regional perspective, this natural asset links each Northeast Avalon community via the Grand Concourse Authority's network of over 200 kilometers of trails. Programming for this network will require regional cooperation, which will provide endless opportunities and further promote the aspect of regional livability. There are ample opportunities in the town to become one with nature, with dozens of green spaces and playgrounds in the town providing areas for play. To relax, Chamberlain's Park, Keep, and Topsail Beach are where you want to be. An obvious feature location to obtain your daily dose of nature is right here at Manuel's River. There are over 6 kilometers of hiking and walking trails that surround the center, and the center is now undergoing a trails master plan, again developed by Track Consulting. We're very much looking forward to the completion of that project. If you refer back to Mary's 5th slide about health and the built environment, the center and its amenities here is the perfect example and checks off all those aspects of livability in one visit. In addition to the obvious health benefits of the Trailway and the Manuel's River, the Department of Recreation and Leisure Services hosts annual events which promote the health and social well-being of residents, making the town highly livable. Winterfest, the 3-hour challenge, Kelligrew and Pirate Day are the highlight events throughout the year, and in 2016, the department plans to increase the list of programs offered to seniors, including expansion to existing walking programs, the development of fitness and wellness programs, and specifically tailored to the senior demographic, and plans are in place to increase the number of tours offered to our residents. The town also has a youth advisory council who are becoming more active each year and will be working with the mayor to provide opportunities to enhance the social well-being of the youth in the town between the ages of 13 to 21. The town boasts 4 elementary schools with another under construction, 2 junior high schools, 2 high schools, as well as options for both public and private post-secondary educational opportunities. So there's your education tick. Neighborhood design. The best example I can provide today in relation to the neighborhood design and how it relates to livability is the town's Main Street Improvement Plan. In 2013, this award-winning plan, developed by CBCL Limited, was adopted by council, and almost immediately recommendations started being implemented. A business improvement association was formed among the member business, and their strategic plan outlines things such as improving the pedestrian realm. With 2 kilometers of the trailway running parallel to Main Street, they are budgeting to complete the trailway loop, which will provide trail users the opportunity to return to their point of origin without backtracking, while at the same time bringing them through the commercial area of the town. Enhancing the streetscape through a facade improvement program, which they are working on guidelines for now, to be launched in the fall for members to avail of. Along with discussing a Shop Local campaign, they are developing gateway signage, have distributed window decals to display in their respective locations, and are producing a second version of their Main Street Visitors Map. One of the demonstration projects within the plan is our Harbor Plaza. This will become a centerpiece of the Main Street area and the town. The waterfront area will provide a quality public space that will accommodate a variety of public events and take advantage of the beauty of the area. The passion of the board of the CBS Main Street Business Improvement Association is something to be proud of, and what this group will do for the business and tourism development in the town will certainly be exciting to witness over the coming years. The BIA are very active on social media, so please like and follow them to watch for great things to come. With the explosion of social media, the town in recent years have engaged the public via Facebook and Twitter. In the past month, the town launched an app which is receiving rave reviews, and we are almost up to 1,000 downloads of the app. Our town council has spent a lot of time listening to our residents and will continue to deliver enhanced programs and services in a fair and affordable way, portraying the town of Conception Bay South as a bright town with a bright future. Never heard that before, did you? The town of Conception Bay South is a family-friendly municipality that strives to offer something for everyone. Probably never heard that line either. Its growing population and customer base is attractive to new businesses. Its weather and rural-urban mix is attractive to residents, and its coastal views and tourism attributes is attractive to visitors. As outlined in its 10-year municipal plan, the town strives to ensure high standards of environmental protection, a vibrant commercial sector, and an efficient street network connecting safe, well-designed neighborhoods that enable healthy and active lifestyles. Our guiding principles are to evoke a sense of self, invest in public places, support broad community goals, foster public health and safety, enhance environmental stewardship, build on strengths, and provide a balanced network for movement. There are many initiatives in the past where municipalities in the region have worked together and will continue to do so to help make the Northeast Avalon the best place to live, work, and play. Although I am biased, this already sounds like a very livable region to me. Thank you.
Shift chairs around. Get our panel in place. You don't have to move your chair. You're a center service. And I think the stairs are on the other side here.
Turn this off.
Okay, so while our team gets organized, and for the sake of folks viewing on the internet, you can email in questions live or tweet, and we have folks here in the room who will read those questions out. If you're here in the room with us, put your hand up and we'll get a mic to you so that the people who are viewing online can hear your question. And John Duff is going to get our panel mic'd up here. So my name is Rob Greenwood. Mike Clare mentioned earlier, I'm Executive Director of the Harris Center. And delighted to have folks in the room here today. And as mentioned, we'll have a regional workshop here tomorrow. We have over 80 people signed up. So looking forward to lots more discussion on key themes of interest to this region. I found it interesting. We have Ross Houlihan from Ireland on stage, getting his mic set up there. We also have in the Harris Center, Colin Heffernan, who did a lot of the organization for this. And we have a colleague from Australia, Mike Heffernan, who is the Pro Vice Chancellor Engagement at the University of Sunshine Coast, who's really interested in these planning issues. So he said he probably wouldn't ask any questions, but I suspect he'll have a hard time holding back now. But we have lots of interested folks in the room, I know. So you can direct a question to someone in particular on the panel, but I'll also give the others an opportunity to weigh in anytime they want. Or you can ask a question to the whole group. And I see Chris Palmer, gentleman with the blue shirt there, with his hand up for the mic. Right there. Thanks, Chris.
Just a general question to start off, and the answer may not really mean anything in terms of the presentations you make, but are we all on the same page in terms of what is the Northeast Avalon region? Because those of us in the extreme Northeast Avalon don't see St. John's and Mount Pearl usually as part of Northeast Avalon, right? But the old Capital Coast went from what, Babels to Marysvales. Does it really make any difference? But what is the Northeast Avalon?
Lovely question to start, Chris, and I'll let our panel weigh in. Who'd like to go first on that? Yep, I think you're on.
Well, it's always been, from the provincial perspective, there's been a regional plan in place in the Northeast Avalon, or St. John's urban region. It's been called, and it included everything north of and including Witless Bay to Cape St. Francis, west to include Holyrood. So all of those, and I think today there's 14 municipalities in the Northeast Avalon region. So that's really the accepted official, if you want to, gazetted definition of the urban region.
Mary, did I hear Chris say he would have thought normally it doesn't include St. John's or Mount Pearl? And
no, it's been just a bit flippant. Those of us who live in the very Northeast Avalon, like Cape St. Francis, tend to see, you know, the four communities up there as being the region, St. John's and Mount Pearl, CBS, another place.
Right on. Others on the panel want to weigh in on this, although I think Mary gave a very definitive response.
Well, I guess I could add to that in the original plan for the Northeast Avalon, or the St. John's urban region, the city of St. John's and Mount Pearl, and that was sort of regarded as the urban core, with the communities like of Babels, Petty Harbor, Witless Bay, and north, even including Torbay, Bali, Pooch Cove, Flat Rock, were seen as smaller sort of local service centers. Conception Bay South was considered in that plan what we call the sub-regional center. And growth in that plan was to be directed outward from the city of St. John's out through to Conception Bay South, where investment in infrastructure was to be directed. And it was. And you can see today, of course, that whole mix has really changed quite substantially. So.
Super. Thanks, Mary. Other questions, comments from the floor or via the internet? Distinguished gentleman at the front here, you can introduce yourself, Tony.
Right, yeah, this is a very simple question, actually. I'm quite impressed by all the plantations. I guess very encouraging to see that there's dramatic growth in number of city areas. So, what are the main drivers? Somebody tell me a little bit more, because I'm new to the province and the region.
You mean economic drivers, Tony?
Economics, social or whatever. Migration would be one of them. So.
Okay. So, thoughts on the main drivers for the region? Okay.
Okay. So I guess from our perspective, migration obviously is one of the main drivers. We're in an area where we're close proximity to some of the bull arm sites and the Valley Nickel Processing Facility and those types of areas. So some of the people who may work there may want to bring their families with them, but they want to live in a more urban area without going all the way into the city. Often we hear, and it's kind of a halfway point between the city and some of those larger industrial areas. The oil and gas industry is also has been a driver for the growth in the area. And we often see young families, and a lot of these housing starts that are taking place in Conception Bay South within the last 10 years have been younger, newer families, who want to, again, not live right in the city and not be right in the urban mix, but have that rural urban flair within a 20-minute commute. They can kind of have it all in our area, and that's kind of some of the things that have been driving the growth within Conception Bay South.
Ross, want to weigh in on this one?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. We have a lot of young families who want to live in Torbay. I talked about the single house lot that we want they want to move out from the city core. We've seen a lot of younger families coming out. I think the new elementary school in Torbay was already too small when the doors opened. There was so many young families in that entire Cape St. Francis region, the very northern tip of the Northeast Avalon. So we're seeing obviously oil and gas has been boosting the entire region, and we're seeing some of those high-paying jobs and executive level jobs are people who are living in Torbay, and they want to live in Torbay, they want to have a large garden, they want to be close to the local playground for the young kids, they want to be close to the arena, but they still want to be pretty close to the downtown. They want to have a nice commute, and if you want to work on Water Street or down on Duckwood Street, you've got a 15-minute commute from Torbay. So they want that. They want the best of both worlds, and they feel like you've got a good urban rural mix. I think they both have Torbay and Central South.
Sweet spot.
Randy is a longtime CBSer, works in Holyrood.
Well, yeah, unlike my esteemed colleagues here, economic development is not my profession, but as a resident of CBS and someone who's interested in the region, I would say what both Jennifer and Ross have said reflects my own sort of choice to live in CBS versus St. John's. I wanted to have that sweet spot, and with due respect to Torbay, the weather in CBS is nicer. I can, after 30 years of driving back and forth from town, I can confirm that quite often leave here in the morning and drive into town is nicer here when I leave and not so nice in town, and similarly when I come back out. Maybe coming back to Chris's question a little bit, I'll offer an anecdote, and it comes back to this kind of towny Bayman thing that I think we probably see within this region. And I'll relate an anecdote of a colleague of mine from a resident of Holyrood. And I went canoeing on the Exploits River one time, and we got one of the local folks we dropped off our car, and he brought us down to the start of the Exploits where we got our canoe and went back down. And so he was chatting with us as he was driving us down to get our canoe, and he said, what are you townies doing out here? And my friend from Holyrood at the time took great offense at being called a townie. But to someone, coming back to your point, to someone from Buckens, Holyrood was part of town, part of the Northeast Avalon, I guess, if we're seeing it that way.
Mary, anything to add to this?
Well, I would say I think there are a number of things that are going on in the region that are affecting the growth and development within the region. So we're seeing people from rural Newfoundland, the rural communities, moving into the region to be closer to healthcare services. We're seeing people moving into the province and moving primarily to this region for employment in the oil and gas sector and those kinds of industries. And we're seeing a reversal of previous trends in other generations where young people simply moved away out of the province, out of the region to find employment. So they're now able to remain here and get employment. So they're creating demand for new homes. And then within the region, we're seeing, I think, shifts of population. So people from the city center, the urban core, moving out to the suburban communities where new schools are being built. So we're seeing demand as people with young families are moving into those areas. So there's many different factors, I think, that are occurring that are affecting population.
I see Professor Heffron raising his hand there at the back next to Neil.
Thank you, and thanks for the night. Enjoyable and informative. And I just wanted to say one thing. Tonight's about livability, and there's no doubt about livability in this place. At the end of the day, though, if you don't have it sustainable, it's about wealth creation of jobs. If you get that going, then all the rest of it, with a terrific natural environment like this, the rest of it actually plays out pretty well. If you're going the other way, then you're always sort of put the top behind the wheel. And gross suggest this is blowing. The idea that Randy was talking about coloured water research and a cluster that comes around that. I mean, that's logical. That's from where you are and your history, the uni being there, but you can't be just the uni. Things sort of can happen around that. And but I just refer people, in fact, that you're not alone in doing that, and you might like to look on the web at the Milwaukee Water Cluster. Okay. Now, what the hell is that from? Well, Milwaukee Commission Police, like a lot of those towns did, but they realised one of the things they really had in common was water. Well, the processing, I think, all the breweries and they Coke and Pepsi were big there, and the water was the thing that really a lot of them had in common. And then when they went into that, and it's like the cold water stuff, as soon as you start thinking about it, it bounces to other stuff. So it was not about just water quality, it was water recycling, it was in the technology of pumps and metering. And that just got, I was there a couple of weeks ago, it was on my mind about this. But from something that you say, water, that's obvious. But a whole heap happened from there, and I just think it was a really great opportunity. Not the only opportunity, of course, but it's one of the base of the economy, an interesting one. I'm an economist, not a marine biologist.
Thank you, Mike. Comments from the panel in response? Agree, disagree?
Yeah, I would chirp in and say, if Milwaukee's focus was on water, I think something that I think Eastern Newfoundland or the province, Labrador as well, has focused on is the cold. We talked about the cold water, but it's something that I've been in on a few meetings with people who wanted to bring in mass internet storage. So massive servers on an international level, and they're looking for colder climates for those to be located because they're cheaper to run in colder climates. No offense, we're probably not going to get a lot of Australia. Newfoundland, in particular Ireland, is becoming a major hub for Facebook, for Apple. Major tech companies are going there, but they're also starting to locate their server there too. So the technologies like that make use of our falling weather and throw it out there. Can also drive the economy. Something to play into our strengths, things that we would normally poo-poo on, shall we say. But they're out there. There's options to harness them.
Thanks, Ross. Other comments on this one? I know Randy agrees wholeheartedly. Other comments, questions here in the room or over the internet?
A couple comments.
Okay. You need a mic, John? Any idea, John, how many people are viewing on the internet? You can say that. Okay.
This is a comment from Dr. Chaplin, actually. She says that Torbay and the county CBS both offer a sweet spot, rural field with urban amenities. And she says sustainability is about wealth and job creation for the rest of the fall.
So, someone agreeing with Mike Heffron. Anybody on the panel on this?
I would just say that I would have to argue that we should be planning for those kinds of things and not just waiting for it to follow. And that's been one of the difficulties in the region, is that the catching up and the putting in place of all of these amenities kind of after the fact without the forethought to sort of plan for it has been certainly probably one of the biggest challenges that a lot of communities are having.
So yes, you need the economy, but good planning around the quality of life.
The economy will enable you to be able to afford to build those things, but certainly to be looking ahead and planning for, particularly with respect to parks and open space and natural systems, and making sure that we're planning for those things ahead of time is advisable, whether you can afford to build the things in them yet or not.
Other folks on the panel on this?
I agree with Mary in that respect, because we have, again, in our situation, we have numerous, we have a recreation master plan, we have our Main Street improvement plan, we have, various amount of plans that, sometimes sit on shelves, and that's, the issue that happens. But in our case, we have done the planning and we're ready and shovel ready now when the economy is right, when the timing is right, when the funding or the cost shared arrangements become available. Because sometimes, you know, it's happened with me specifically. You know, I may get a call that say, okay, we have X number amount of dollars that we need to get out the door from a funding perspective. Do you have anything ready to go? And yep, we have things ready to go. And you know, that lends to our foresight, our municipal planning, and our recreation, our master planning, and green space planning, and all those things to be ready for some of those opportunities that come up. So then we're ready to capitalize on some of those opportunities.
And I think one of the good examples of the planning ahead was done in the 70s when the regional road network was set out. And that regional road, the last piece of the regional road network is the completion of what we're calling the Team Gushu Highway now. That network serves this region very well, even though people might complain about congestion at certain times of the day. But for a region of this size and the fact that you can get, you know, from one end of it to the other in probably less than an hour is quite, you know, it's good. But, you know, if there hadn't been that kind of planning in place to set aside those areas for that network, I think we would be in a different situation today than we are now.
Thanks, Mary. I think we have another question. Did I see? Yep.
Being a resident of Torbay, I'd say this is 40 years I've been living there. I originated in Scotland. Came over in 1892 on the old Polina. This is a wonderful area in which to live. But there are limitations that we in Torbay are constantly made aware of, and that is the supply of water. And this is something that can be a very limiting factor on a region that wants to expand. The businesses in Torbay tend to be, as I think it was indicated, operated largely from residential properties, one person, two persons. And this whole question of expansion, continued expansion, and so on, the availability of water is potentially a very limiting factor. This person sitting here has his own well, which is cared for. I installed a meter, and I think I'm one of the few people in this province who has got a license on his well for domestic purposes. So I have to keep track of my water usage and make an annual report to the Department of Conservation. But it gives me some protection if any development, anything should happen that might cause contamination of my well, or I should lose the well. There's potential for the province to step in or tap, and the person who's done this could face a fine of up to $1 million, which again might be a limiting factor on people considering development in such areas. But anyway, this is something I think we've got to keep the forefront of our mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Comments on water in the region?
Yeah, I would speak to Dave's, and it's true. It's a major issue in Torbay. The availability of land when people have their own well and septic, as opposed to their municipal water services. And we've been working with the region, and there are new regional water studies being done at the moment. But we've seen some of the issues firsthand. In the past, we've been working on a new business park feasibility that had to be ruled out. We were hoping to have on-site water and septic for that development, and it's not feasible at the moment due to some contamination issues. But rest assured, I think one of the most common visitors to Town Hall are some of the representatives from Environment and Conservation. We work with them heavily on a lot of our major projects in the town, just because we know water is a very finite resource. We've only got so much. We have to protect what is there with our existing residents. So it is
Water and sound.
we have an abundance of sound. But it's something that we work on with our major developments. We work really closely with to protect it as best we can. But it is a limiting factor, and that's something that you wouldn't realize. Anyone who's flown into St. John's International Airport will say there's ponds everywhere, there's water everywhere. But we don't have the systems in place for our groundwater resources and how finite it is and how carefully it has to be managed.
Other comments on the water supply systems in the region? Good. Oh, okay, we have hands all over the place, which is a good thing. Jennifer, were you over with John for someone on the internet? We'll let Mike Clare ask one. We indulge him occasionally.
Last May, the Harris Center organized a workshop or conference on transportation issues, and actually Mary was one of the panelists. One of the complaints that most people had at the conference was that there's no regional transportation, public transit system. If there was one, for the people who are out of town, out of St. John's, is there a demand for public transit in CBS, Torbay, Paradise, etc.? And do you think that if there was one, that people would use it?
I'm going to hold this because I think every time I turn my head, I think it kind of goes in and out. So I don't even know if it's on now. Oh,
yep,
there we go. Okay. There has been, long before my time with the municipality, there was, and I don't know, Mary may be able to comment on that as our former director of planning for the town of Conception Bay South. There has been some transit study done. And more recently, there was one done as part of a green initiative. And the outcome of that was essentially people were interested, but more interested in maybe a carpooling perspective as opposed to a public transit because they didn't want to spend an hour on a bus to get to their destination. Maybe a park and ride, maybe something that could be looked at, for commuters, because I'm sure that once everyone was polled, we would probably quickly realize that there could be 100 people at the Confederation building from CBS, and there could be 400 people at the university. The issue that we often hear is people's lives have become so scheduled and so busy that kids get picked up on the way home from school, groceries need to be picked up, errands need to be ran during lunch breaks and those types of things. So people are used to having the convenience of their vehicle at their disposal. That will require, in my opinion, a massive social and cultural shift. There has been some conversation of the recent announcement of the Metro bus going into Paradise, and a lot of people, I've heard unofficially, friends and family that live in CBS are kind of, let's wait and see how that works to see if it's something. But there hasn't been a huge demand to the town that we're aware of. We have had some conversations with local transportation companies to provide. I know years ago when I was younger, there was some busing companies that did provide a transportation system into St. John's. But again, their response to us is if it was lucrative, we'd be doing it still, so that's, it's something that I think people know it's probably the right thing to do from a green perspective, but from a convenience perspective, at this point, we don't see a large demand.
Others on the panel on transportation?
Yeah, we've had some informal discussions, some discovery discussions with Metrobus so far. We may actually see a town-wide survey go out to residents, hopefully this summer, to get some information on that, the type of demand that might be out there. Some of the initial discussions we've had with Metrobus have Metrobus actually have an issue. They're almost at capacity with their vehicles. So adding new routes, new towns can be a bit of a holdback for them at the moment. It's been banded about that maybe the smaller buses, the cheaper minibuses may be the ones to do. And then it gets knocked down because you hear how often they get turned over. How many turned over is a bad term for a bus, but how often you have to replace them. The maintenance costs, the per head costs, it makes them a little bit infeasible. Now this is stuff that we're learning as a town from Metrobus. That's not to say the option is ruled out, but we do have, I guess, we're kind of logically more closer to some existing routes. The Stavanger Drive Route 3 runs very close to the municipal border. So it is something we'll be looking at. Both the Department of Infrastructure and Public Works with the town is involved with it as well to see the most logical routes, where those turnaround areas, where should the bus stops be. We're at the kind of tops of the trees area right now, but for the town of Torbay, it's something different. Having that regional transportation, I don't think it's just, I don't think, and maybe this is a personal level, I should put that in because my boss is in the room. It's not just to serve existing residents. I think a bus system may encourage maybe some lower income housing, some social housing in the town of Torbay, which we don't have enough of for future residents in that respect. We don't have a lot of those, we'll say, jobs. We'll say minimum wage jobs. There's not a whole lot of minimum wage jobs in Torbay, and usually it's, you know, people with lower income or young people who need to get to those jobs. So if they're in Torbay, they got a carpool or they got to get a taxi in, and that can make it completely infeasible. But having the bus in may bring them closer to some of those economic opportunities and some of those jobs as well. So it's something we're looking at, hopefully see more during the summer.
Thanks, Ross. We did have a couple more hands up, but Randy, on this one?
As a serial commuter, to me, it's a chicken and egg thing. I've lived in and I've traveled to places that have public transit, and I use it quite happily. I adapt to it quite quickly. Am I demanding it here? No. I'm happy to use my car. So if it was there, I would probably use it. It would require someone to step out and, you know, take a fair bit of leap of faith, I think, to build the system. You know, I think it's, you know, field of dreams kind of thing.
Mary?
It's one of the greatest challenges of North America to separate people from their vehicles. So, you know, we're not alone in that. But certainly in this region, one of the barriers to a public transit system is that we're not dense enough. So the density of communities, and this is why Paradise has been able to get a bus service to the Elizabeth Park area, because that is the densest population in the town of Paradise, and the density is sufficient enough to presumably support a public transit route. The other thing about public transit is you have to have a lot of other infrastructure in place to go along with it. So bus shelters, bus lanes, you know, efficient networks to get you to places quickly. And what makes a transit system successful and will help to get people out of their cars is if it can get you to where you're going quicker than you could get there, and probably cheaper than you could get there by car. So we allow parking to be free in just about every place we drive to. If parking was more expensive and you had an alternative to take a bus, perhaps you would be more inclined to take a bus. So there's a whole bunch of factors around the public transit. One of the things that the city of St. John's has got in its new draft municipal plan is to look at some of the major transportation corridors in the city. So Torbay Road, Topsail Road, for example, and will allow forms of development, so higher density and mixed use commercial and residential along those corridors with reduced parking requirements. So if you lived in a building there, you wouldn't necessarily have to have a car, you would be on a transit route. So that's one potential way that they could increase ridership there.
So we had several hands up. Let me see who was in the queue again. I saw Tony, Chris, Mike. Okay, Mike.
Gone actually, but just in reinforcing the gentleman's point about water, it's so important, but so subtle, to livability, obviously, to urban form, to the attraction of industry, and yet until it becomes an issue, nobody notices it. And I was just going to use the example: 2 of our 6 major cities, Adelaide and Perth, it's a showstopper. I mean, there is not development happening. Development is not being attracted to those areas now because of no dam sites, salinations, a whole heap of reasons why they can't get more water. No big rivers, and even their desalination plants are costing a fortune and breaking down, and it's such a subtle issue. And the point's well made. Coming to St. John's, what the hell? There's more water than you can poke a stick at, but unless it's immediately available, anyway, let's leave it at that.
Thanks, Mike. And you can hand the mic right to Chris.
You notice I'm seated quite purposely in the Torbay section of this arena.
I noticed the clustering here, yeah.
Mary, in her presentation, made the comment that most communities are putting in place projects that improve the livability of people. In fact, all 4 presenters gave examples of exactly that. Isn't it true that in good times, good budgetary times, livability projects tend to get done? Your walking trails, your libraries, your biking lanes, and so on. But in hard times, aren't the livability projects the first ones that get axed? Either because capital works or other things tend to be priorities. Now, the purpose of this session was to look at increasing livability in the Northeast Avalon. Now, looking at that from 20,000 feet, in order to achieve that, doesn't the priority for projects improving livability have to be raised by people, by municipal governments, and by even federal and provincial governments? I wonder if the panelists have a view on that.
Thanks, Chris. Anyone want to weigh in on that one?
I will. Because I think, particularly in the area of health, and if we want a healthy population, I mean, if you think from a provincial perspective, the amount of money that we're pouring into the healthcare system that doesn't seem to be getting any healthier, why are we not putting in place things that prevent people from getting sick in the first place and spending money there? And the amount of money that we would have to spend there is probably a lot less than what we're spending at the other end of that spectrum. And so the first thing in provincial budgets that tend to get cut in healthcare is health prevention. But the money still gets spent, not because sick people need to be treated, of course. But so yes, there is a role certainly for provincial interest in that. And this is why I say that, there needs to be some provincial policy around community development. And we're seeing that in Nova Scotia. In Nova Scotia, there's a provincial land use policy that is now requiring all municipalities in their planning and municipal planning work to address issues of health in policy, so that they're evaluating development proposals in terms of walkability and infrastructure projects in terms of provisions of sidewalks and connectivity and that kind of thing. And it also affects provincial decision-making with respect to the siting of structures like schools and hospitals and other facilities, so that it makes sense. It's not just an economic decision that gets made, it's a broader perspective on how that decision gets made. And I think if we did a little bit more of that here, we would be a little bit better off.
Other comments from the panel on this one?
I can just make a comment in regards to echo what Mary referred to in her example. And I'm not a planner, so I'm gonna put that out there from the get-go, but I know that within our municipal plan in Conception Bay South, there are requirements for green space allowance for residential subdivisions. It does also ensure that we're looking at connectivity and, putting the reliance back on to the developer, regardless of the economic time, from a municipal, provincial, or federal perspective, just to ensure that, some of those aspects are looked after. Fortunate for me, I haven't experienced a real downturn yet in my role with the town. And, I think, again, that there's lots of opportunities that exist, and as long as the plans are there and in place, and you're ready to capitalize on some of those projects and everything that you do, you have the health and well-being and social interaction opportunities for residents. That's pretty much, satisfactory for them to kind of, as long as they see that you're keeping them in the forefront, regardless of what the economy looks like. It's satisfactory, certainly.
Ross or Randy on this one?
Hey, Ross.
Microphone light's gone off.
There you go. There we go. Regional cooperation.
I think we are starting to turn the page, though. We are starting to see the municipalities look at the walkable communities, and I think our residents are probably more informed than ever before, even about their own personal health. I mean, it may not paint a pretty picture in this province, but I think we need to address that there is a problem first, and I think we've gotten to that very small first step. But I think you're seeing municipalities react, and I think you're going to see developers react as well. I think people are going to become more picky about where they live. They want to be interconnected. They want to have the services. They want to. They don't want to have to get in the car, I think, as much. I think people truly do have that. I think maybe when gas was $1.20 a litre, it pushed them a little bit more that they did want to have a walkable community. We're starting to develop more trails. We have the East Coast Trail running from north through south in the town of Torbay. We're looking at some an inner and outer loop, almost two great joint letter C's that come out from the East Coast Trail and then plug back in, because they're being demanded. Residents want them. They want to be in communities. They want to have wooded areas, and they want to have their intermingled trails running around it. So it's a small first step, but I think we are starting to turn the page. You're seeing the developments like ours or like Galway that are in the pipeline, and that's, I think, going to be the new standard. I think that's what people are going to demand.
Randy, good on this one?
I think Jennifer's represented my interest as a resident of CBS. I have the new trailway, which is just a couple hundred yards from my house, and the fabulous new indoor walking track, which is just around the corner. So I'm
Probably
good.
increase
I'm
the
good.
value of your house.
Okay, I think mic up to Tony, which will be probably our last question for tonight.
Wow, very important question. So I'm Permit from education cluster, so I got to ask a question about education. I think the Hollywood Road Marine Base sounds like Hollywood. Still, it says a good example how university could play an important role, right, to build a more livable community. So perhaps you can talk a little bit about how university could engage major stakeholders, all level governments, profit, non-profit organizations, developer. You talk about hospitals, schools, and so on and so forth. It's something that we can share the best practices in this example.
Lovely question. Great setup for our workshop tomorrow. And this may be your last comment for each of the panels, so you can respond to Tony and fill up any last remarks. Who'd like to go? I guess Randy can go first on this one.
I'll take a shot at it, but as I said, the people working at the town of Holyrood in the Economic Development Department have really been our primary partners on this. From a university perspective, the thing that I like about the University Research Park concept is that it contextualizes how the university would exist and operate in that relatively remote location from the main campus, which to me has been something that I've always scratched my head a bit about and had to live through in terms of the Institute purchasing that site, saying, well, here's a great site on the water that we have to as a site to grow, and then went looking for someone to populate that site and had great difficulty. There was a 2-year gap between when the site was purchased and when it was actually populated by my team. And so the whole University Research Park, really from a university perspective, gives us that context of how we're going to operate in the community without having to move, big chunks of the university physically, to Holyrood. It'll create a kind of a whole new dynamic environment and a mechanism for us to work with industry in terms of feeding that innovation cycle. That's purely the university context. From the town's perspective, as I say, I think the whole live, work, play concept of a university research park and how having people there, doing the research, small businesses living there, working in the community, their families living in the community, sort of driving the need for public transit and retail space and that sort of thing is, I think, is where they see the attractive nature to it. Other stakeholders obviously would be looking at federal, provincial governments at some point in time for funding support and that sort of thing. We're also looking at federal agencies and provincial agencies with responsibility for oceans, perhaps locating branch offices there, working with the Research and Development Corporation about potentially partnering with us on the Ocean Technology Testbed, those sorts of things. And then there's some fairly significant industry players already in the town of Holyrood, including Valero, which is a major oil and gas downstream company out of the US, and Schlumberger, who already exist in the town. So there's already a fairly good industrial base there.
Randy, maybe Jennifer, do you want to respond to the question? Any other final comments you want to make?
I think all that I can say to that is, I've been thinking about a number of workshops and seminars and conferences that I've attended over the years throughout the country. And, every time, every agenda, there's always something to do about the university town and how the university is integrating with the community. The topic is regionalization. We all know how successful Memorial University is globally. We hear about the business students all the time, and the engineering students are all over Canada, North America. I'd like to see how the university, we can go away and talk about Memorial as a university region.
Yeah, I would say I'm really looking forward to tomorrow, because I think the university is a resource that we haven't used enough, I think, in our community, to harness the brain power that's there in both faculty and staff, and of course the students that are there. It's not something we use enough. And I think that's why I'm so excited about tomorrow, is to make some linkages, talk about some of the issues that are facing our town, obviously our region, and hopefully get to address that. Yeah, it's a bit of a failing at the moment. I think we should incorporate more. I think more of what we're doing should be overlapping. It's the university's mandate and it's each of the town's mandate that we should be doing a lot more together, and hopefully tomorrow is the start of it.
I was just sitting here thinking that the city of St. John's has a new draft municipal plan, and unlike their previous plan, this plan recognizes the significance of the university within the city. I mean, with the student and teaching population of 17,000 or so people, it's like a small town within your city, and that there should be more sort of interaction and collaboration, I think, between the university and the communities, not only the city of St. John's, but the other surrounding communities. And there's lots of areas of research and that could be done that would benefit the region through the university, for sure.
Shameless plug. Mike is here from Australia, and he and I are working on a book on public engagement examples from around the world and best practices. There's a university, I haven't been there, Mike has been, at Clemson in the US, and there's a symbol, it's a park bench. I think it's a statue, but it's based on the original park bench where the mayor of the city and the president of the university would sit on that park bench once a week and compare notes and coordinate and figure out ways they could do more together. And I think it's a really kind of poignant symbol for, and we have loads of great faculty members, the stuff Randy is doing in Holyrood. There's hundreds of examples of great initiatives and opportunities, but I think we can be a lot more coordinated and get a lot more value for both sides. And I think the workshop tomorrow, and we've been doing these now for 12 years with the Harris Center, connecting the university around the province. But often it's maybe hardest in your own neighborhood. And so I'm looking forward to that myself. We're almost out of time, so I've got some thank yous I have to put out here. First, just for me doing this session here, and I really look forward to the workshop tomorrow. Tony Fang is here, who's an expert on immigration and labor markets. I was born in Toronto, but my mom was a Newfoundlander. We moved back to St. John's when I was 7. We moved up to Kelligrews when I was in grade 8, lived on Middlebite Road. Moved back to St. John's after living in Saskatchewan. My wife now teaches in Torbay. So I think this workshop for me is just perfect. I can't wait to talk about living in one community, shopping in another, etc. It's a reality for most of us. Everybody here should have evaluations. We'd love for you to fill those in. Leave them maybe on the corner of the stage before you leave. If you're viewing on the web, you can do that online. As we mentioned, we have the regional workshop tomorrow, beginning at 8 a.m. with a complimentary breakfast. And then the workshop itself begins at 9. Thanks a million to the fantastic staff here, Sarah Ah, and the rest of our team at the Manuels River Hibernia Interpretation Center. Staff at the Harris Center, always for their fantastic work in the session and the webcast. Colin Heffernan, Jennifer McVeigh, Katie Dickey, Kathy Newhook, and John Duff. And please join me. Well, first of all, I want to thank all of you for coming out this evening and viewing on the web. We always say, you know, the Memorial Presents series are all about having an informed public dialogue on issues that matter to the province. Democracy only works if we engage. And so for you, you're voting with your feet and with your time at home. Can't thank you enough. And I'll have a gift to give our presenters after we finish. But please thank me for their really succinct, perceptive, and really meaningful comments. Randy Gillespie, Mary Bishop, Ross Houlihan, and Jennifer Lake. Thanks a million. And again, hope to see you at our workshop tomorrow, and have a great night. Good night.